The protagonist of this manhwa is one of the most ordinary-looking people you'll ever see, and he works at a logistics center to make a living. Kim Jong-yum kinda hates his job, and you'll soon find out why. When he tries to strike up a casual chat with the robot next to him, the tin can just ignores him and gets straight to work. And that's exactly why he dislikes being here. You see, the entire logistics center is filled with technologically advanced AI robots that handle most of the manual labor. Jong-yum is the one overseeing everything, but there's not a single person to talk to. He sometimes feels pretty down, missing the warmth of human interaction, and occasionally wonders if he's ended up in the wrong place. This all started about 2 months ago, right after he was discharged from the military, and that's when his streak of bad luck began. The first major setback was that his parents moved to Uijeongbu. As a consolation gift for his discharge, they paid the deposit and 6 months' rent for his studio apartment, leaving him to live alone near his old school. Thus began his forced solitary life. Although he was financially stable thanks to government support and the rent coverage from his parents, he decided to take his time looking for a job. With no rush, he hoped to find the best opportunity. But things didn't go as planned, and he faced rejection after rejection before even getting the chance to prove himself. After a month of job hunting, he was going stir-crazy from extreme boredom. One day, while killing time, he ended up venting to his sister about their pathetic brother who couldn't even land a job. Naturally, his sister had a field day trolling him, and during their chat, he heard about delivery companies using AI robots to make work easier, and a lot of people were working as operators in these companies. His interest was piqued, and that's how he ended up in this dump of a place where there's literally no one to talk to. Just as I'm saying this, we hear another person calling out to him. This man looks quite grumpy and unpleasant at first glance. It wouldn't be surprising if he were the manager, as he fits the role perfectly. Anyway, the senior informs his junior that they're out of tuna stock, even though the system still says there's some left. He tells our boy to check the warehouse for any missing stock. Of course, Jong-yum complies with a fake smile plastered on his face. Looks like the big bro was not expecting to hear this, and he promptly asks if he is actually recovered. Anyway, once Kim heads into the warehouse, the door behind him starts to close. He quickly begins searching for the tuna his senior mentioned. After rummaging around, he spots the stock, climbs up a riser, and grabs it. Just then, he hears a loud thud of the door to the warehouse slamming shut. He tries turning the doorknob, but it's stuck. He calls his manager Shin, but there's no answer. The thought of calling 911 crosses his mind, but he decides against it, because he's not stuck in a freezing freezer, so it wouldn't be worth the hassle. Instead, he takes a selfie and sends it to his sisters, letting them know he's trapped in the warehouse. At first, she teases him about his situation, but then she suddenly says she just heard a building collapsing outside her house. Of course, the brother gets worried about his sister and quickly calls her phone number. When she picks up, she doesn't say anything, and he wonders if she's just pulling a prank. But just as he's thinking that, the entire warehouse starts to shake, and the emergency alarm blares. The place descends into chaos, and he hears announcements telling everyone to evacuate quickly. Stuck in the warehouse with no idea what's happening outside, he starts banging on the main door with his empty fists, but his frantic pounding gets no response. Desperate, he decides to call 911, only to find that the cellular signal is down. He's seriously losing his mind now, and the thought that there might be a full-blown war going on outside is freaking him out. Suddenly, he notices something pounding on the main gate from the outside, each impact leaving a giant dent in the massive steel door as if it were nothing but a cardboard cutout. His hands tremble as he pulls it back from the doorknob, instinctively knowing that shit is going haywire outside, and if he makes a single sound, he's certain he's done for. Sweating profusely, he collapses to his knees, and thankfully, the pounding on the gate eventually stops. However, the commotion and screams outside are still loud enough to terrify him. 3 days pass since that unfortunate day, and he's still stuck inside the warehouse, surviving on the available food. Since no one has come looking for him, he's convinced that something major must have happened outside. He wonders if there's a war going on, and by now, he's almost relieved to be stuck in here, thinking he might have been a goner if he had been outside. The alarm that used to blare constantly has been silent since yesterday, which is a relief. At least he can sleep now. But he's unsure how much longer he can hold out, especially with his battery running low, and this might be his last note to the outside world. He's praying that a soldier or someone from his country finds him soon and keeps the family safe. Just when he thought things couldn't get crazier, a system window pops up in front of him, telling him he's been chosen, and to check his awakened abilities. At first, Jong-yum thinks he might be hallucinating, but then another window appears, saying he has acquired his own personal subspace for storing objects. He starts to wonder if there was some kind of cocaine in the tuna cans he's been eating for the past 3 days. Another digital notification pops up, saying that the target has been designated and asking if he wants to store it. Without hesitation, he confirms, and suddenly he begins to fall, landing hard on his butt on solid ground outside. He scrambles to his feet and looks around, only to see rubble and debris everywhere, and everything is in total destruction. He spots his senior lying dead on the ground. While the system windows keep on flashing, our boy is busy puking his guts out after seeing his senior's lifeless body. The system then states that a suitable operating system for him has been found, and it's currently being installed. Suddenly he hears footsteps approaching from behind, and there is a huge shadow cast by a figure behind him, and he is pretty darn sure that this shadow is not of a human. As the camera pans out, we see an orc-like monster with sharp fangs and a giant blood-soaked body. Jongyum sweats profusely as he tries to calm himself, desperately hoping his fears aren't true. He tries to stay optimistic, convincing himself that the loud roar he heard 3 days back might be from a gorilla or a bear. But he doesn't dare look back at the thing behind him, and instead bolts as fast as he can, running for his life. His panic reaches new heights as he realizes there's a literal monster hunting him down. He runs frantically, even stepping on someone's innards in this wild dash. He has no idea why there's an orc-like creature here, or why it's so determined to catch him. But he knows one thing for sure. If he doesn't escape soon, he's going to get caught. Suddenly, the system window pops up, announcing that synchronization is complete and asking if he would like to enter the subspace. With no hesitation, Jongyum quickly says yes. After all, the monster is almost upon him. Just as the creature's hand swings at him, he jumps into the portal. While he is finally safe on the other side of the portal, the monster is stuck on the other side of the portal and could do nothing other than groan in frustration. Jongyum gets confused and wonders why the monster can't enter this place. A hovering drone confirms that nothing can enter his subspace without his permission, because he is the master of it. The drone explains that the subspace is entirely under his control. Jongyum is stunned to see the drone talking to him, and he has a strange sense of déjà vu. When he looks around, he finds himself back in the PAX's fulfillment center warehouse, but this time it's part of his new subspace. The entire place is filled with the same robots as before. The system announces that, since he's entered the subspace for the first time, he'll receive a reward for completing the tutorial, which is a 1 mana stone. The stone materializes in his hand, but before he can figure out what it is, the monster outside starts slamming against the portal. The noise startles him, and he almost forgets that he was being chased by a literal monster. He panics once again, and frantically asks the system if he's really sure the monsters can't get inside. The system confirms that nothing can enter the subspace without his permission. The system window flashes once again, stating that the PAX Fulfillment Center is a 5-story building with a total floor area of 10,000 pyong, approximately 33,000 square meters. It holds every product needed to improve the lives of customers. The current shipping speed is 60 kilometers per hour, and it can handle 1 shipment at a time with the shipping size limit of 2 meters. Jongyum is just as clueless as all of us about what this information even entails. The system then further confuses him by revealing that there are only 2 minutes left until maintenance. Confused, Jongyum asks if the logistics center will shut down after 2 minutes. The drone confirms this and explains that he can use the Mana Stone in order to supply energy and maintain the facilities in the subspace. Since he currently has 1 Mana Stone, it can power the entire facility for the next 24 hours. Jongyum is amazed by the efficiency of the Mana Stone, and the drone promptly explains that when the PAX Fulfillment Center was stored in the subspace, the energy supply system was modified to fit the subspace environment. Therefore, the facility runs on Mana Stones. Jongyum asks if all this is even possible or if it's just some sci-fi bullshit. Suddenly, the lights in the facility go out, and the drone starts flashing lights. The PAX system explains that the energy supply to the facility has been cut off, and if the energy isn't restored, PAX Fresh and other products could start to rot. Apparently, PAX Fresh is one of the services that ensures the storage and delivery of everything from fresh vegetables to meat and prepared meals in frozen and refrigerated conditions. Jongyum looks back at the monster glaring at him and realizes that outside is practically a war zone. In such a situation, food is crucial for survival. With the power to the freezers and refrigerators cut off, it's a huge problem. He asks the drone if the Mana Stone is really a substitute for electricity. The drone confirms this, so Jongyum asks how he can obtain more Mana Stones. The drone replies that he can acquire Mana Stones from beings of another world. Well, it's clear that our boy is not exactly thrilled to go against this muscle-bound monster who can literally rip him apart in one fell swoop. He tells his drone to use the Mana Stone for now, and he promptly heads into the facility to grab some weapons. Once inside, he gathers a handful of weapons, and the system window flashes the price for each weapon. With the limited supplies he has, he's concerned about running out of stock if he directly throws them at the monster. He is also not sure whether these blades can even penetrate the monster's thick skin. He decides that wounding and killing the monster slowly might be a better approach. Since the monster can't enter his subspace, he doesn't need to take it down in one go. Instead, he'll work on injuring it gradually, making sure not to waste his resources or risk running out of weapons too soon. Jongyum throws the axe at the monster, but it only grazes the monster's body, which only further aggravates its rage. With his initial plan not working as hoped, and realizing he doesn't have many weapons left, he decides to try throwing the heavy axe once more, hoping it will make a more significant impact. He asks the pack system how much stock is left for the axe, and he is surprised to find out there are 15 remaining. He was expecting only a few, so this number catches him off guard. He quickly inquires about the location of these axes. Once Jongyum reaches the storage area, he is shocked to find out that these axes are duplicating infinity. The pack system explains that these items are created using a process that allows them to be duplicated indefinitely. While they can be damaged or altered, they cannot be depleted. This revelation shocks Jongyum, because if what the system is saying is true, then he has access to an infinite stock of weapons. Surprisingly, the pack system confirms this. With this newly discovered knowledge, Jongyum is relieved that he no longer needs to worry about running out of weapons. He can freely throw them at the monster without concern for depleting his stock. He is sure that his shoulders might give out before the monster does, but at least he has a seemingly endless supply of weapons. The system then shares an interesting tidbit. Apparently, our boy doesn't have to throw the weapons manually, because he can automatically ship products from the subspace to the outside world. The system explains that shipping is only possible every 30 seconds, but it can be sped up by improving the skills. Jongyum quickly asks how to throw his weapons, and the system says all he has to do is think about the registered product and say ship for it to be automatically sent. Right as the system explains this, Jongyum promptly says the word ship, and an axe flies through the air at incredible speed and smashes into the monster's disgusting face, taking it down effortlessly. The axe was thrown by the drone, and when Jongyum asks about the throw speed, the system replies that the default shipping speed is 60 kilometers per hour. Now it makes sense to Jongyum what the system meant by shipping speed before. The system then reveals that if he wants to change the speed, he can adjust it up to a maximum of 75 km/h. To go beyond that, he'll need to enhance his skills. Naturally, Jongyum asks the system how to enhance his skills, and the system explains that he can do so using mana stones. Speaking of mana stones, our boy quickly remembers the monster he just defeated, and he realizes he'll need to fight more of these creatures to advance. He quickly grabs some gear from the facility. The first thing he grabs is lightweight combat boots costing around 50,000 KRW and matching tactical combat pants for about 78,000 KRW. Once he's equipped, he also buys a detailed map of the Seoul metropolitan area and a permanent marker. He draws a circle around the Gwangjin district and then marks the neighboring districts as well in a certain order. With his plan in place, he decides to start with the nearest marked district and work his way towards his final destination, Ijeongbu, where he hopes to reach his parents. Since Jongyum is starting from Gunpo, and he does not even have a car, he realizes it's going to be a long journey to reach his parents. Although it's not as fast as a car or motorcycle, a regular bicycle is still pretty valuable in a post-apocalyptic world, and if I'm being honest, it's practically a Lamborghini at that moment. He hops onto the bike and starts pedaling through the desolate world. After about 30 minutes, night falls, and he's managed to take down almost 12 orcs during this short journey. He then reveals to us that he has learned one valuable thing after taking down 12 orcs. But before he could explain anything about his discovery, a monster suddenly appears and tries to attack him. Jongyum quickly retreats into his subspace, leaving the monster outside. While the monster is immobilized, he uses his shipment ability again to deliver the axe with incredible speed. Unfortunately, the axe misses its mark slightly and only injures the monster's shoulder. To use his shipment ability again, Jongyum has to wait 30 seconds for the cooldown, and there's also a range limit of 10 meters. Despite these downsides, he's learned that his skills are pretty amazing and can be improved by gathering mana stones and upgrading them. Besides shipment, Pax's ability has other applications, and we will figure out soon what that is. Suddenly, the monster notices movement behind him, and when he turns around, he sees the axe flying back into the portal, and then it comes back, hitting him in the face again, sealing his fate on the spot. This is actually the second application of Pax's shipment ability, which is also known as product retrieval. It automatically brings back dispatched items, which is just as convenient as the shipment ability. Jongyum uses his retrieval ability once more to get the mana stone from the monster. He is kind of curious why he can't simply retrieve the mana stone like this without killing the monster. He then asks Pax the same question, and learns that he can use his retrieve skill on the stone because it belongs to him only after he kills the monster. Nevertheless, Jongyum steps out of his subspace and reveals to us another piece of crucial information he had learned about this apocalyptic world. Apparently, the bizarre orcs aren't the only creatures ravaging the planet. There are also winged monsters, and he knows it's going to take a lot to hunt one of those down. Suddenly, he hears cries for help. But before he can figure out who is calling, the scene transitions to this man, who goes by the name Choi, desperately trying to run. He's so exhausted that each step seems heavier than the last, and a flying creature is trying to hunt him down. The monster swoops in, slamming the man from behind and sending him crashing to the ground in agony. There's another person behind the injured man, but before this, another guy can help his friend up. The monster lands right in front of him and blocks his path. Its ferocious mouth is drooling, as if human flesh is the most delicious thing in this area. But strangely enough, the monster doesn't attack the man standing in front of it. Instead, it turns its gaze toward Choi, who is lying on the ground, groaning in pain. The man is bewildered to see that the monster isn't attacking him, and realizes that this creature was targeting Choi all along, likely because Choi is smaller and seems like an easier target. He has no clue what he can do against this giant monster to save his friend, because all he has is this little knife, and he is not sure if this knife can even be used to distract this monster. Just then, the ring of a bicycle bell echoes through the area, and not surprisingly, it's our boy speeding toward them, but these two have no idea who or what is coming their way. Before they can process what's happening, they watch in shock as the monster that was hunting them down is struck by a projectile, sending it sliding across the ground from the force of the blow. The monster was knocked down by a single throw of an axe, leaving both of the men struggling to process what they had just seen. Jongyum quickly checks if they are all right, but they are still in awe, their jaws hanging open as they try to grasp how someone on a bicycle managed to defeat a flying wyvern with just an axe. The two of them quickly ask Jongyum if he is a soldier, and they also begin bowing their heads in respect, grateful for saving their lives. Jongyum, glad that they are safe, answers their question by pointing to his uniform. He explains that he is an employee of PAX FC, and they can see he is wearing the company's uniform. This revelation shocks them even more. They had assumed he was a seasoned soldier given his impressive skills and appearance. Even if he wasn't a soldier, his abilities are so extraordinary that if they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they'd never have believed that someone could take down a wyvern with a simple axe throw while riding a bicycle. Jongyum is surprised to learn that these people are familiar with the concept of abilities. One of them quickly agrees, mentioning that he has an awakened ability himself, though it's just a modest driving ability. Given the circumstances, he hasn't had a proper chance to use it. The other person, Choi, begins to laugh and admits he feels a bit envious because he hasn't awakened any ability himself. Jongyum then asks if there are any other people around. Choi confirms that there are not, explaining that they are in Block C, which has a logistics center. A lot of people gathered here, but unfortunately, monsters did too. Most of the people were attacked, killed, or eaten alive. Only around 10 to 15 survivors are left, and they are relatively isolated in Block E's underground terminal. He further explains that they were looking for a road that vehicles could use, and they also wanted to gather some daily necessities, but suddenly they were attacked by the monster. The other person then suggests that instead of talking here, Jongyum should join them. He is welcome to come with them to their living quarters on the 4th floor of the basement. The monsters have never attacked that area, so they can sleep comfortably there. They also offer some light snacks. Jongyum considers the offer, and we can tell he is definitely interested in seeing the vehicles they mentioned earlier, and is in desperate need of information about functioning vehicles. Eventually, he decides to accept their invitation, even though he's unsure if he should fully trust them. As they begin to walk away, we take one last look at the dead monster lying on the ground. That is when our boy retrieves the mana stone from inside the monster and quickly tucks it into his subspace. He's glad that these two don't know about his ability, as it means he has a backup plan if things go wrong and can escape into subspace if necessary. A while later, they finally make it to the basement, where they see a man who appears to have just taken down an orc all by himself. Choi quickly runs over to his friend, asking what happened and if everything is all right. The orc killer reassures him that everything is fine, explaining that the orc must have wandered in by accident. Fortunately, it didn't see them, so they were able to take it out easily. No one is injured, but they can no longer be sure that the place is safe. On the other hand, Jongyum feels a bit terrified by how dangerous this place is, but he quickly snaps out of his thoughts when the orc killer asks about him. Choi explains that Jongyum is the one who saved them from the wyvern and used to work for PAX FC. He also mentions that Jongyum is quite strong, having killed the wyvern with a thrown axe from a distance. Everyone is amazed and curious about what kind of ability he might have. At that moment, a woman rushes toward him, and she is absolutely thrilled that he saved Youngsu and Byung-chul. She is so grateful that she begins doing a happy dance. The others start to gather around him, showering him with praise. Jongyum tries to downplay it, saying he was just doing what he had to do. Just as our lad is getting so much attention, Choi tries to disperse the crowd, telling them not to tease the young guy. Just then, the orc killer guy speaks up, saying that everyone here has been working together for over 10 years, and that Yongsu and Byungchul are like family to him. He's genuinely grateful to meet someone who saved his family, and introduces himself as Lee Jin-mok, the center manager of Daehyun Express Terminal. He even bows his head in respect for saving his two friends. Once the pleasantries are over, Jin-mok gives Jung-yum a brief rundown of the place. He explains that while they can't guarantee the safety of the location, it's much more comfortable than the outside world. They have food and water supplies from the logistics center, so Jung-yum can eat as much as he wants without feeling embarrassed and can make himself at home. Jin-mok also mentions that they have plenty of supplies and can get more from the logistics center if needed. Kyle is actually pleased that these bunch of stupid heads don't suspect him of anything just because they see him as a kid. Of course, everyone is left wide-eyed and their mouths are hanging open at this absurd news. Mok Jin quickly asks what on earth this even means. Choi confirms it again, saying it's literally gone, and explains that this is why they were chased by the wyvern. The others in the group refuse to believe this and question how such a massive building could simply disappear. Mok Jin then finally comes to terms with the reality, and also tells his other friends that if the monsters roaming around can be real, then it's not too far-fetched to believe a building could vanish into nothingness. Meanwhile, Jung-yum stands silently, and I'm not quite sure if the disappearance of that logistics center has something to do with our boy's subspace. Anyway, the manager tries to keep everyone calm and tells them that no matter what, they need to dig through the tunnel. If they stay here, things will only get worse. He encourages everyone not to be discouraged, saying that their time has just come a little early and that they will start heading into the tunnel as soon as possible. The woman from before, fired up, tries to motivate the others by reminding them that, even without the logistics center, they still need to think about their next move. So she insists they must force their way through. Jung-yum turns to the manager, asking what force our way through actually means. The manager explains that everyone here has homes elsewhere, and vehicles are essential for travel. However, with the roads blocked, they need to find a way through. Jung-yum perks up at the mention of the vehicles and asks for more info. The manager confirms they do have working vehicles, but explains that all the roads are blocked. The golf course obstructs the way to the north, containers block the east, and the southern Yangdong Expressway is completely destroyed. The tunnel to the west is the only exit, but unfortunately, a group of wyverns has taken over that tunnel. Until now, everyone has been surviving by getting food and water from the logistics center, but now they have to force their way through. The manager tells Jung-yum that he doesn't have to go through the tunnel since the blocked roads are for vehicles, and there are ways to escape on foot or by bicycle. However, Jung-yum quickly responds that he needs a vehicle as well, and thinks it's best to go through the tunnel. The manager does not try to change our boy's mind any further, and simply says he's welcome to join them if he's up for it. Jung-yum smiles and says he'd be glad to work with them. Jung-yum also thinks in his mind that it would be better if he kept his abilities hidden. While the group seems nice enough, he can't ignore that they've been struggling to survive while he was safe in the center. They might have run out of food and supplies, and he's sure they won't be upfront about their situation. He understands their need for secrecy, and plans to stay cautious as well. He then turns to the manager and says he wants to check out the situation with the tunnel and the wyvern. He's planning to go scouting, but in reality, he just wants to use his abilities to demolish that horde of monsters to rack up some sweet mana stones. The scene then flashes back a little. After taking down a bunch of monsters, he saved up 5 magic stones. With these, he can cut the cooldown on his shipping ability down to 5 seconds. That's when he sees 3 new shipping abilities. The first one is Precise Delivery, which, as the name suggests, locks onto the target and guarantees a hit. The second is Simultaneous Delivery, which lets him ship up to 2 items at once. The third is Automatic Delivery, which allows him to automatically deliver designated items, with the timing interval being adjustable. As cool as these abilities sound, each one costs about 10 stones, and our guy is totally looking forward to see them in action, though he's still a bit unclear on what exactly automatic delivery does. In the present moment, he's grinning from ear to ear, thrilled that he saved up the magic stones, and looking forward to his scouting mission to earn some more, or so he thought. His dream of purchasing fantastic abilities is quickly dashed when he finds himself stuck with Youngso, who was one of the guys he had saved earlier. When our boy asks him why he's tagging along, Youngso says it's too dangerous to go outside alone, but Jung-yum reminds him that he was the one who was being chased by a wyvern. But Youngso insists it doesn't matter because he can't let him go alone. Besides, he is confident our guy will save him again if needed. Our guy then remembers Youngso mentioning he had awakened a driver's ability, so he asks him if he can see a message window or something like that. Youngso says he hasn't seen any message window or anything like that, but he has a gut feeling that he has indeed awakened an ability, and it just hasn't fully matured yet. Well, this info isn't exactly reassuring to our boy, and he's starting to feel pretty worried. As night falls, their bike zooms down the road at insane speeds, Jong-yum is literally sweating in fear as he watches Young-so literally steer the bike with one leg while trying to balance on it. When he asks why Young-so is driving like this, the man responds that there are so many cars on the road, and it's hard to see. That's when Young-so spots a wyvern up ahead. Our guy quickly tells him to stop since he can't see a thing. It looks like the monster has finally caught up to their presence, and as it glares at them, Young-so asks what they should do. Just then, a projectile hits the monster, taking it down in one blow, leaving Young-so completely baffled. Meanwhile, our guy calmly tells him to keep his head straight and not look back. While he is saying that, he sneakily retrieves the mana stone and stores it in his subspace. Finally, Young-so points out that he can see the tunnel over there. He slams on the brakes, but before our boy can ask him why he stopped in the middle of the road, the reason behind their abrupt halt becomes clear when they see a ton of monsters crawling around the area, and Young-so is absolutely terrified, and I would not be surprised if he has sharded in his pants already. As one of the monsters starts to walk toward them, Young-so is pretty sure their game is over. Even with the electric bikes, there's no way they can outrun this many wyverns. Just as Young-so braces himself for the worst, our guy decides he has no choice but to use his subspace ability. He quickly calls up his system, dumps his mana stones to cut down the cooldown from 30 seconds to only 5 seconds. Young-so confusingly asks what the heck he's doing, but our guy doesn't bother to explain. Meanwhile, the monster lets out a deafening roar, and every monster in the vicinity starts closing in from all directions. Just in the nick of time, Jong-yum yells, "Ship!" and a projectile comes crashing down, taking out the monster and saving Young-so. He glances back, still anxious and panicked, and is left wide-eyed when he spots a portal behind them. After taking down the monster, our guy quickly grabs the stones from it and tells Young-so to stick close, because that's the only way he can keep him safe. Young-so agrees, though he's completely clueless about what's going on and why there's a logistics center behind them. Just then, more monsters show up, and one of them is quickly dealt with by our guy's axes. The more monsters get ready and quickly charge at them. Young-so panics and begins stepping back, and eventually dives into our boy's subspace. The monster, on the other hand, brutally slams into the subspace barrier, while Young-so stumbles back and falls down to the ground. The monster regains its composure and charges again, but our guy slips into his subspace just in time. The monster slams into the barrier once more and is soon taken down by an axe, dropping right away. Meanwhile, Young-so looks at this scene in awe, as if he has just witnessed a miracle. He can barely believe his eyes, and from the logistics center to the axes flying around, he's not sure what amazes him more. But he is sure of one thing, that for our boy, these monsters are nothing more than pests, and this tunnel is just an annoyance he can clear out without breaking a sweat. He then reflects on how everyone in the basement wanted to use the delivery vehicle to carry food and move relatively safely, and the tunnel is just a part of the route. Even if they get through safely, the monsters are still out there. But for our guy, it's different. He really just needs the vehicle as a means of transportation, since he can deal with anything with ease. Young-so has even started to feel a bit jealous as well, because with an ability like that, he could easily get to his family as soon as possible. He's not sure how far our boy plans to travel that he is feeling the need to use a vehicle. Suddenly, they notice the monsters starting to run away. Jong-yum is fascinated to see that these reptiles are pretty smart, because they're fleeing instead of charging into danger. Adolf had told him that the power of darkness would make him stronger and allow him to sense a power, unlike anything he had felt before. Our boy curiously asks if he's never seen a mana stone before. Young-so admits he hasn't, so Jong-yum explains that he uses them to enhance his abilities. Young-so finally gets it and wonders if he'll get a chance to try it himself someday. Now it finally makes sense to our boy as to why Young-so didn't bother to extract the mana stone from the orc's corpse earlier. Anyway, Young-so points out that with abilities like this, our boy could easily solo this entire tunnel single-handedly. Jong-yum then explains that he didn't come here with the intention of clearing out the tunnel. He just wanted to check it out. If it seemed doable, he'd break through quietly and didn't mean to show off his abilities like that. Young-so then apologizes for tagging along, but our guy reassures him that there's no need to worry. He didn't know the way to the tunnel anyway, so if he had come alone, he wouldn't have been able to get through. He then suggests it's time to head back since the wyvern has retreated for now, but might attack again soon. That's when Young-so asks how far our guy plans to travel that he feels the need for a vehicle. Jong-yum explains that he's trying to reach his family, and his final destination is Uijeongbu, near the Gangnam district. This news takes Young-so by surprise because his own destination is on the same route to Gangnam. He reveals to Jong-yum that he's heading to Indeokwan, which is on the way, and asks if it would be too much trouble to let him tag along until they reach Indeokwan. Jong-yum isn't sure how to respond, but Young-so continues, saying that even if he gets through the tunnel, he's not confident he can make it home safely. His driving ability isn't much help in combat, but since Jong-yum can fight off monsters, he might have a better chance of reaching his family. Youngso then promises to help our boy reach Gangnam faster than anyone else, and swears he won't be a burden on their journey. He's even willing to provide food for our boy along the way. Jongyum starts to see some real value in this partnership. Youngso's driving skills are beyond doubt, and more importantly, if this guy is on his side, he won't spill the beans about his abilities. It's a win-win situation because Jongyum fears that if his abilities became known, there's no telling what people might do, maybe even try to assassinate him, though that might be overthinking it. Still, better safe than sorry. So, all in all, our guy finally gives Youngso the green light to tag along, and the dude perks up like a kid in a candy store. Jongyum then tells him he'll handle the tunnel and makes it clear that Youngso should keep his abilities a secret. He even asks him to make sure everyone else stays out of his way. Youngso eagerly agrees, promising to ensure that everyone cooperates. He's super positive about it, ready to do his part. But things didn't go as Jongyum hoped, because that foolish guy went ahead and told everyone that our boy would be able to break through the tunnel on his own using his awakened abilities. All they need to do is wait outside until he is done, and then they can move forward. Jongyum is left wide-eyed and clueless, seeing that Youngso just spilled the beans on what was supposed to be a secret. The others are astonished by this news and are eager to see how Jongyum is going to pull it off. Youngso, on the other hand, is more than happy to explain, while Jongyum curses his rotten luck, realizing he's now in a tough spot. In the end, Jongyum steps up and says that by tomorrow morning, he'll have the tunnel cleared for everyone to leave. In his mind, helping them is the best plan he has, considering they still have food supplies, which should keep things relatively calm. Once the supplies run out, chaos will likely erupt among everyone, so it's wise to clear the tunnel and ensure everyone can leave safely. That's when the manager calls out to Jongyum, saying he won't pry into his abilities or ask any questions about them. Instead, the manager respects him for the decision he has made to help everyone. He offers some food supplies from their reserves to Jongyum, which leaves him quite taken aback, because this much generosity is just too much. The manager explains that since Jongyum risked his life to scout the tunnel, all they can offer in return is a bit of food. Now that he's even clearing the tunnel for them, they feel they can't repay him enough for his kindness. They apologize, saying all they can offer right now are a few words of gratitude. Jongyum tries to explain that he did it for himself because he wanted to, and that they shouldn't have to go to such lengths to help him. He insists that the food must be meant for their families and tells them to keep it. Youngso, however, steps in and tells our boy to just take it, and further points out that rejecting the food would be too harsh for everyone involved. Youngso also reminds Jongyum that he has a family too, just like everyone else. At that moment, Jongyum sees how excited everyone is to reunite with their families, and it makes him feel a pang of sadness because doesn't want to let them down. As everyone enjoys their time together, the next day arrives. When they finally reach the tunnel entrance, Jongyum tells everyone to stay back. He then starts pedaling his bike into the tunnel, determined to clear it out and come back. As he gets closer to the tunnel, he begins to spot the monsters. But before we see him battling them, the scene flashes back to his childhood. We see young Jongyum with a sore eye from a fight with his sister. He complains about it to his father, and it leads to another argument with his sister, and they eventually start beating the shit out of each other in front of their father. That is when his father points out how close they seem to be. His father then reflects that he was an only child of his parents, so he always envied the bond between siblings. He tells them that they have no idea how envious he is of their relationship, and even though they may argue now, they'll soon realize how truly precious family is. Suddenly, their mother bursts into the room, leading to a hearty argument between their parents. It's at this moment that Jongyum feels the warmth of family. The scene then transitions into the last night, where our boy is recalling all of these moments with his family after seeing how everyone is overjoyed at the prospect of finally reuniting with their families, knowing that Jongyum would clear the path for them. They spent the entire night like that, basking in the warmth of anticipation. When midnight strikes and everyone falls asleep, Youngso wakes up to use the bathroom. Noticing that Jongyum is missing, he heads outside and asks the patrolling guards about him. They report that Jongyum said he was going out for some fresh air a while ago. He then further walks forward and looks around and finally spots our boy. He quickly asks why Jongyum can't just sleep, and our boy replies that he can't sleep there. Just as Youngso looks in front, he is absolutely boggled out of his mind to see that the entire vehicle is filled to the brim with food and supplies. Youngso finds this ridiculous and quickly asks why he is giving away so much stuff. Our boy just casually mentions that he only loaded about half to avoid making the vehicle too heavy. But this amount should be more than enough for everyone. Youngso is even more astonished when Jongyum says this is the last vehicle he had to load. The realization hits him quite hard because if this is the last vehicle, then our boy must have packed the other 15 vehicles with the same amount of supplies as well. Jongyum quickly tells him to keep this a secret from everyone else. He then warns his friendly AI not to overdo it because he doesn't want to embarrass himself. Our boy just casually says they still have plenty of supplies left. The man is left astonished to hear this, realizing that the amount of supplies our boy just generously gave away is more than what you will find in an entire logistics center. He can't fathom how much Jonghyum must have in stock to give away so much. We return to the present, where Jonghyum is effortlessly demolishing monsters like it's no big deal. As he fights, he thinks about how much easier it would be if he could just put all the people into his subspace and carry them to the other side. Unfortunately, his system states that with the current subspace level, it's not possible. But if he achieves subspace level 2, he could accommodate up to 20 people. To reach that level, he'd need to gather at least 100 mana stones. Jonghyum quickly does a mental tally and notes that there are at most about 40 monsters, with a few running away. Given the numbers, leveling up here isn't feasible. He still needs to think of another way to level up, because he eventually wants to put his own family into the subspace. Suddenly, Jonghyum notices something unusual among the fleeing monsters. A closer look reveals a particularly jacked up version of Wyvern, and I can tell that this is some kind of boss-level monster. Even Jonghyum isn't sure what he's dealing with. We finally cut back to the outside, where everyone is anxiously waiting for Jonghyum to come out. Some are starting to worry if he's okay inside that tunnel. They then finally spot him emerging from the tunnel, effortlessly pedaling his bicycle as if he's just out for a casual ride. His uniform is smeared in blood, and the group looks on anxiously. But they soon breathe a sigh of relief when they see a smile spreading across our boy's face. They burst into a joyous dance, celebrating the successful completion of their mission. Well, it seems like it's finally time for everyone to part ways and reunite with their loved ones. They express their gratitude to the manager for sticking with them until the very end, and hope that he gets safely home as well. Jonghyum hints that if they run into any trouble, they should try opening the cargo hold, as he has prepared a little gift that might be helpful. Everyone is intrigued and as well as curious about the gift, but they eventually get into their respective cargo trucks and start making their way through the traffic. Once they cross the tunnel, they wave their goodbyes one last time and head down their separate roads. We then see Jonghyum sitting in the passenger seat, still preoccupied with the monster he saw in the tunnel. He's unsure if it was actually a wyvern, as it fled so quickly that he didn't get a good look at it. He then starts wondering if the wyvern he spotted was a leader, or maybe just an adult version of these monsters. But his thoughts are cut off by a weird crunching noise coming from under their truck. When we look near the tires, we see that the trucks run over some dead bodies, and the driver's face is full of sadness from hearing the bones breaking. Even Jonghyum can see the regret on his friend's face, but they've got no choice but to keep moving. With bodies and wrecks everywhere, there's no clear path, and it's a mess no matter where they turn. He thinks to himself that if his discharge had been delayed by just 3 months, he might have been one of those dead soldiers. The whole situation is worse than they thought, with monsters still munching on the corpses. Suddenly, Youngso calls out to him, which snaps our boy out of his thoughts. Once he looks ahead, we see that the road is blocked up ahead. Youngso points out that the barbed wire looks like it was set up by the military to block something, and they'll have to take another route. He mentions there should be another bridge they can cross. But that is when our boy spots something at the end of the blocked bridge. And just as we take a closer look, we notice a new type of monsters we have never seen before. Now it finally makes sense what the military was trying to block. While Youngso is panicking and considering turning the car around, our boy sees this as an opportunity to level up his subspace. He then notices a narrow sidewalk on the road, perfectly blocked on both sides. He quickly tells his friend not to turn the car around and asks if he can pass the vehicle through that sidewalk. Jonghyum explains that he's come up with a good plan to get through this situation without having to turn back, and he's absolutely thrilled and excited about pushing this truck through a literal pedestrian sidewalk. Youngsu was shocked by such a suicidal choice, especially when an orc appeared in front among the hounds and started scattering the mutant hounds. The monsters didn't seem to be friendly with each other at all. Even though the orc had an advantage in size and strength, the mutated dogs were simply more numerous. Poor orc didn't stand a chance against such a hungry pack, and their hollow mouths didn't stop them from tearing flesh. Our two could only see the blood and flesh flying in every direction. Poor Youngsu was really scared, and even knowing the abilities of our hero doubted the sanity of the idea of going straight there. Just in case, he asked what Youngsu meant and whether he is really going to cross this bridge. Our hero was more than confident in his abilities and thought it was even easier than his frightened friend thought. While Youngsu was trying to gain courage, Jonghyum asked him a strange question. Had he ever heard of a game where 3 races wage war against each other? It's a certain space strategy game called Stark, but Youngsu was much older than our hero and didn't know anything about this game. Jonghyum decided to tell him a little about it. This game had content where players could play on customizable maps and change settings as they wanted to have fun. Among these maps, our hero's favorite was the one where he had to fend off swarms of monsters using limited units and terrain. And as Jonghyum thought, the current situation was very similar to that map. Of course, Yongsoo had no idea why he was being told all this, but his understanding was not necessary in this situation. All he had to do was to do as Jonghyum told him. To begin with, Yongsoo had to turn the car around and back up to the barbed wire barrier, of course tearing down the barbed wire, making as much noise as possible, thus attracting the attention of the monster hounds so busy with their bloody feast. Then it was Jonghyum's turn to get down to business. He activated his system and resorted to the last skill he wasn't even going to use. But now was the most suitable situation. He unlocked the auto ship skill by spending 10 magic stones. He immediately asked Pax to spend all the remaining magic stones to increase shipping speed. Pax did so without delay, and now the shipping speed had increased to 100 kilometers per hour. Now that everything was ready, Jonghyum could invite the mutant hounds that had been eating orc to come to him. After a hearty lunch, it is playtime. The unsuspecting dogs rushed forward, but they didn't make it in time. The double-door refrigerator quickly demolished them completely. As you can see, the game was not fun for the hounds. It didn't end with the first refrigerator, and more came after it. In just a few seconds, Jonghyum received 12 magic stones, and he was very happy about it. The reinforced shipping range and precision delivery he had improved while he was still clearing the tunnel. Jonghyum might be throwing axes instead of refrigerators now, and together with the recently improved speed of precision delivery, it could be quite effective. But while using precision delivery last time, Jonghyum found out that this skill doesn't track the target all the way through. Instead, precision delivery only slightly corrects the direction according to the movement of the target. This could be a big problem against these hounds that are not just fast, but incredibly quick. Even an axe flying at 100 kilometers per hour can be dodged by these hounds when attacked from afar. Moreover, these creatures are so fearless that they will not stop even if one of their kind dies right next to them. Considering the current situation, where the delivery interval is 2.5 seconds, axes will not be enough to hold off their onslaught. But the refrigerator, thanks to its size, is perfectly suited to destroy several targets in a single shipment. Not only is the fridge wide, but it's also heavy enough to take hounds down with just a graze. On top of that, the automatic delivery he had just improved proved to be very convenient. Jonghyum didn't even need to watch the battlefield. The system automatically destroyed any approaching threats. For now, our hero could just rest and relax. The hounds did not give up despite not even being able to get close to Jonghyum. All they had to do was howl with rage and keep trying. Although, let's be honest, against the flying refrigerators, they didn't stand a chance. As the battle continued, Yongsoo had the carelessness to look back. He nearly lost his jaw from surprise when he realized what he saw. He thought that Jonghyum could only throw axes, but here were refrigerators that were beyond his imagination. Okay, one flying refrigerator was something he could still imagine, but a new flying refrigerator every 2 seconds was unbelievable. Besides, why would the logistics center keep so many refrigerators in stock? Yongsoo began to wonder if it could be that the stock being retrieved was coming out as new products, even if axes are indeed retrieved and reused by his system. But how it could work with refrigerators was not clear to him. Yongsoo just couldn't believe it and froze in place. He didn't even notice when Jonghyum came back to him and asked if he wanted something to eat. Yongsoo finally realized what was going on and asked a question to make sure. He wondered if it was possible that Jonghyum's supply was infinite. Jonghyum was a bit surprised by such a question. He thought that Yongsoo had figured it out a long time ago. But he was wrong. All this time, Yongsoo had thought that Jonghyum was collecting axes after using them to recharge them, and couldn't even think that he actually had an infinite amount of them. In fact, Jonghyum did indeed collect the axes after use with the system, but only so that they wouldn't lie on the road and accidentally injure someone. Hearing this didn't make Yongsoo feel any better. He still couldn't believe that items could be infinite. When he came to his senses a little, our hero asked again what he wanted to eat. Yongsoo had had a difficult day of emotional turmoil today, and a Coke Zero and a donut was more than enough for him. While they were eating quietly in peace to themselves, behind them, the delivery system was mercilessly scattering hounds. Yongsoo was a little ashamed of his stupidity and that he had underestimated Jonghyum's abilities. But he was still grateful for the food, even if it was infinite. Our hero was only happy to share and was also grateful to Yongsoo for his trust from the beginning. Now if he needed anything, he should just let our hero know. He had almost everything in stock. But Yongsoo was in no hurry to overuse someone else's generosity. He had enough of what Jonghyum had done for him, clearing the way of monsters and helping him get home faster. Literally, after they crossed this bridge, it would only be an hour's journey to his home. Jonghyum was happy to hear that his friend would be able to see his family soon. Yongsoo was too, but he also had fears of what he might see there, and he just hoped that nothing had happened to his family and they were safe. Jonghyum understood him very well, for he too was worried about his parents and sisters. He wanted to give Yongsoo some kind of gift and noticed his ragged clothes. He shouldn't have come back to his family like this. Besides, the hounds were still continuing their futile attempts, and they had time to solve the clothing problem. The only remaining question was what style Yongsoo would choose. He was already uncomfortable that our hero was helping him even with clothes, but he didn't refuse. Besides, Yongsoo was sure that Jongyum had what he needed: aviator glasses and a cool jacket. Just what a top-class driver needed to drive around the apocalyptic landscape. Just in time, the hounds were almost finished. Just a couple more to go. With a new look, Yongsoo gained an unprecedented confidence, and sure of the truck's durability, decided to head out right away. His movements were fast and precise. Even Formula One drivers would envy him. Jongyum only had time to grab on tightly before Yongsoo pressed the gas. The remaining hounds didn't even try to stop them, and they drove straight down the narrow road. Yongsoo was lightning fast regarding everything about driving. At this rate, he only needed 20 minutes to drive home. But Jongyum needed to hold on tight. Our hero's truck flew down the broken roads as if it were a highway. Poor Jongyum asked Yongsoo in vain to drive slower, and it looked like he was about to throw up. Luckily, his suffering wasn't long. They finally arrived at Yongsoo's house, or rather, to what was once his home. Now it's a ruin. Kim Jongyum and Yongsoo had reached their destination. Looking at it from afar, the apartment complex was in extremely poor condition. The structure was already old, and the attacks had nearly demolished it. The surrounding buildings suffered the same fate. The whole district was not built to withstand a monster apocalypse after all. There were remnants of buildings and debris cluttering the road, but oddly enough, no corpses could be seen littering the ground. The view was very different from the main street, where bodies were scattered all over the place. The duo entered one of the crumbling buildings, and Yongsoo faced his home's door for the first time in a while. His hand trembled at the thought of his family on the other side of the entryway. He just needed to press the number, open the door, and go inside. Those were 3 simple steps, but he couldn't bring himself to move his hand to the keypad out of debilitating fear. Jongyum watched from behind. He could see that his new buddy was having an impossibly hard time opening the door. Yongsoo had stepped on the gas so hard that they covered a distance that should have taken an hour in less than 20 minutes. That was how eager he was to see his family again. He drove to this area, fueled by thoughts of his wife and kid. But if he had to face a cold corpse inside their home, he might not be able to handle it. There was no way he could open that door, no matter how much resolve he had. Anyone would be stunned at the thought of the worst-case scenario. Jongyum reckoned it would be best if he took the lead and opened the door instead. He tapped Yongsoo on the shoulder, and he tensed up. Our boy asked if he could press the doorbell for Yongsoo's sake instead. At first, the S-tier driver didn't know whether to accept or not, but he eventually accepted Jongyum's kind offer. No one would want to confirm their family's death, especially in this uncertain era of instability. If Jongyum were in Yongsoo's position, he'd rather have someone else open the door, even if there was only a 1% chance of seeing his loved ones lifeless. Finally, Jongyum pressed the doorbell, and they waited with bated breath. As it turned out, he didn't even have to knock or press the bell. A person inside the house slowly opened the entrance. The duo turned to the door as they heard it creak open. Yongsoo's eyes widened as he stared at the person opening the door to his home. His wife and little girl stood at the entryway, seemingly waiting for him all this time. When she saw her husband, who hadn't come back throughout the confusing and tumultuous descent of monsters, she couldn't believe her eyes. Yongsoo's tears finally escaped. He felt the joy and relief of seeing his family alive after dreading the possibility of never seeing them again. He quickly ran toward his wife and daughter, covering them in a tight, loving embrace. Jongyum watched the heartfelt reunion from the sidelines. He was happy his new buddy got a good ending. They didn't even have to knock or ring the doorbell. Yongsoo's wife just knew she had to open it. She heard a noise and looked through the peephole to see her husband. While he thanked every deity for keeping his family safe, Yongsoo's daughter clung to her father, crying and telling him she hated him for making them worry so much. After a few minutes of sobbing, Yongsoo's wife finally noticed another person standing in the hallway. Yongsoo introduced Jongyum as the benefactor who helped him get back safely. At that moment, our boy's vision turned blurry as his world spun, and everything went black. He fell, lost strength in his legs, and started to lose consciousness for unknown reasons. Yongsoo worriedly called out his name, but he looked way too dazed. The last thing Jongyum saw was the hazy silhouette of Yongsoo and his family. He knew he shouldn't be losing consciousness here and now, but it was out of his control. What little light remained faded, and he couldn't take it anymore. Jongyum's mind drifted to a distant memory when he curiously asked his dad why he wasn't crying. Dad just looked at him reassuringly and explained that parting with loved ones didn't bring only sadness. All kinds of emotions come to mind. You inevitably remember all the time spent together. It was the day of Grandma's funeral, and Dad felt affection, gratitude, regret, longing, a wide array of emotions. He firmly believed farewells didn't need to be solely sad. Upon reflecting, Dad felt more gratitude than sadness. Gratitude for being shown the true essence of love. His mother had given him a heart that cared without expecting anything in return. It would be difficult for a child to understand now, but one day, as time passed and Jongyum gained more life experience, he would realize the same thing. Dad firmly believed his little boy would understand that giving and receiving love would never be easy. From the memory of his grandma's funeral, Jongyum's subconscious brought him to a more playful one. He was transported to the days when his sister would beat him mercilessly with pillows. She weaponized pillows and proudly beat her brother to the ground. It always ended with him crying from the pain, sometimes with a matching injury on his face. His sister was ruthless, though. She insisted she didn't even hit him hard. She even used the pillow to soften the blow, yet he cried like a baby. Little crybaby Jongyum ran to snitch on Dad while his sister celebrated her victory. Once again, Kim Sol had successfully defended the household's championship title. The siblings bickered and fought a lot, but from Dad's perspective, they were as thick as thieves. Dad always lectured them about how, despite resenting and annoying one another now, the day would come when they'd realize just how precious family is and what love truly feels like. Then, Mom would come and lecture her husband about yapping and not helping her prepare dinner. That night, Jongyum remembered how good the piping hot stew looked on the dining table. The whole family sat at the dining table while Juyeon was busy fiddling with her phone. Mom asked if she was texting a crush, but that's just how middle school girls act. They can't go one day without texting their friends. On TV, a professional fight, personally curated by Kim Sol, was playing. Mom couldn't even watch her dramas, with the feisty little girl hogging the TV. Given that Sol was going to middle school next year, she thought of trying out for the boxing or combat sports club. She even picked a school with the best sports program. At that time, middle school was still a distant concept for little Jongyum. Years passed, and he finally graduated from primary school and joined the same middle school his sister attended. He looked at the welcome banner for freshmen and breathed in the air of his first day. Jongyum awkwardly looked around, surrounded by unfamiliar faces. He watched as some kids laughed and walked together to their respective classes. He could still picture how neat and radiant their new uniforms looked. Jongyum couldn't help but compare himself to his better-off classmates. While they wore new, perfectly fitted uniforms, he had to wear an old, used one that looked way too big for his lanky frame. Despite the stark difference between his jacket and theirs, young Jongyum still smiled and held his head high. It's just a school uniform after all. What a young Chad. His positive outlook on middle school quickly faded when he became a target for lowlifes. He tried to do the right thing and defend a bullied classmate against some delinquent upperclassmen. All it got him was countless cruel stomps as he desperately protected his head from senseless violence. Just as one of the delinquents was about to hit him in the face, a firm grip stopped the bastard cold. It was Kim Sol. She'd gone through a growth spurt and had been training with the school's club for a while now. She looked down at the delinquent like she was looking at an ant. Kim Sol easily dispatched the delinquents, who had been hassling her little brother. Afterwards, she turned to Jongyum and enlisted him into her club. From then on, he was required to join the morning exercise. He thought he was just getting bailed out by his monstrous sister, but that was far from the truth. Little Jongyum was subjected to a hellish training regimen designed by his sadistic older sister every single day. He kept up with this routine, met some good friends, and continued to live a peaceful and vibrant middle school life. A few years later, their eldest sister, Juyeon, got accepted into a prestigious nursing school. Their mom, dad, and siblings could not believe their eyes. Jongyum kept up his training a few years after that. Can you see those gains, bro? At that time, a life-changing letter arrived in the mail. He read the snail mail sent by the government with terror on his face. It was time for him to fulfill his mandatory military enlistment notice. Mom waved goodbye, Dad stood proud, and Saul laughed at his new look as they sent him off to training camp. He had to shave his head. He looked pretty good with a buzz cut, though. Mom yelled at him to come back safely and avoid getting hurt. Dad simply told him to never be discouraged, no matter what happened. Along with the other bald boys enlisting, Jongyum walked with his head held high. He could still hear his family cheering him on as he walked toward the military camp's entrance. Once he was far enough that they couldn't see his face, Jongyum's tears finally came pouring down. He loved his family. He loved how supportive they were and how much they loved him in return. His memories shifted into dreams, and his dreams ended as he slowly opened his eyes. To his surprise, he was lying down on a soft futon in an unfamiliar room. He sat up looking around in a panic. Not recognizing his surroundings, he began to sweat profusely. The last thing he remembered was fainting near the doorway. He could recall Yongsoo meeting his family, but the memory felt a little hazy. Just to be safe, he instinctively reached for an axe from Pax. Jongyum was startled when a voice from behind asked if he had slept well. He turned around to see Yongsoo's wife and daughter sitting at the dining table, peacefully eating their meal. Both of them looked at him with puzzled expressions as he stood there, axe in hand. Jongyum was frozen in place, unsure of what to do as he awkwardly stared at them. He was still reeling from his heartfelt dream and did not know what was happening or what to say in this situation. Scanning the room, he saw Young-soo sleeping soundly, not far from his futon. Young-soo's wife worriedly asked Jong-yum if he was okay. He had just suddenly collapsed and fallen asleep like a baby outside. He was so zonked out that they didn't want to wake him. Realizing he was in a safe environment, he felt terrible for immediately reaching for his axe like a cornered animal. He quietly threw the thing back into his private dimension and asked how long he had been out. He hadn't even slept that long, just knocked out for about 3 hours. Also, Young-soo had already told his wife everything that happened. He wouldn't stop talking about how much of a help Jong-yum had been in getting home in one piece. For that, Mrs. Young-soo was thankful. If it weren't for this young man, she might never have seen her husband again. The sincerity of her words made him feel awkward, as he insisted that Young-soo also helped him a lot. At that moment, the suave driver woke up and insisted that, in comparison to the help he received, he couldn't say he'd done much at all. Jong-yum had saved his life multiple times after all. Mrs. Young-soo invited the boys to have a meal before they talked. Mr. Young-soo insisted on waiting for Jong-yum to wake up to eat together, so he had been napping. With a warm and relaxed smile on his face, Young-soo invited the young man to the dining table. Jong-yum returned the warm smile with one of his own. As soon as he sat at the table, he was greeted by a freshly made, piping hot homemade meal glistening under the light. It was a conger eel stew. Jong-yum was not expecting to be served such a lavish meal when the apocalypse had been raging for days. Mrs. Young-soo hoped the stew would suit his taste as she wanted to treat her husband's savior to something a little more generous than usual. But with limited ingredients, this stew was the best she could make. Jong-yum wasn't lying when he said there was no more luxurious meal than this. Since Mrs. Young-soo and her little girl had already eaten, she left the boys to eat their fill. He found it a little odd that she would go as far as to leave the room, but the food in front of him looked too good to think about anything else. He took a spoonful of the stew, making sure to get a little bit of everything in that sucker. When he put that thing in his mouth, it felt like he was ascending to the high heavens. It tasted so good he reached enlightenment. It looked like he had tasted the nectar of the gods. The taste brought on a bright sensation and a surge of emotion. The vast and diverse flavors of the stew unfolded on the tip of his tongue. He couldn't figure out how Mrs. Young-soo managed to balance the sweet and oily taste of stir-fried kimchi. What lingered in his mouth was the clean, savory taste of mackerel and the kick of kimchi. Despite the rich and complex taste profiles, somehow it felt cozy, like it was made with a ton of love. Bro went full-on food wars on that stew. He finished the bowl and respectfully put the spoon down on the table. Both Jong-yum and Young-soo had been eating convenient foods from packs, so warming their stomachs with a homemade meal felt life-changing. It made our boy contemplative about his life. Since the world ended up like this? No. Ever since he left the military 3 months ago, this conger eel stew had been the best meal he'd had. It was almost comparable to his mother's kimchi stew. His thoughts were interrupted by Young-soo's question. If he remembers correctly, Jong-yum was supposed to cut through the Gangnam area. Without a hint of hesitation, Young-soo offered to drive him there. This left the young man confused. Young-soo asserted that he had already discussed his plans with his wife. When he told her that Jong-yum was on a quest to find his family, she insisted that Jong-yum's family mattered too. But Gangnam wouldn't be his final destination. The trip would take much longer as he planned to go to Uijeongbu, and he'd need the vehicle for a lot longer. Young-soo had already thought about that, so he laid out his conditions. But first, they should take this conversation outside. The sun was about to set and the sky looked gorgeous. Young-soo gave Jong-yum the rundown of the plan to use the truck to reach Gangnam. Once the drive was over, he would return to his family using an electric bicycle. That was also the condition he wanted to bring up. He wanted to have the electric bicycle for personal use. Even though he felt a little weird asking for the bike, he still wanted to be of help. If it was okay with the young man, Young-soo would gladly drive him to Gangnam as fast as humanly possible. Jong-yum understood the plan. It was pretty simple after all. But something wasn't clicking quite right. Why would a family man, just reunited with his loved ones, take on such a high-risk mission? Of course, with his driving skills, he could probably outrun most monsters with ease and immaculate style. But aside from his driving skills, he would still be putting himself in grave danger. Young-soo had just won the game. His family was alive. They had food and supplies in the cargo hold, so there was no reason to make such a risky move for a stranger. Curious about his reasoning, Jong-yum outright asked what was going through the family man's head. Why would he stick his neck out trying to help someone he just met? Well, his reasoning was as simple as it gets. Jong-yum had saved him before and helped him get back to his wife and kid. Wasn't it only fair that he returned the favor? Also, he asked why Jong-yum helped him in the first place. The young man tried to think of an answer, but he couldn't. He had acted out of the goodness of his heart. Young-soo was well aware that he wouldn't have survived or made it this far without Jong-yum. Maybe he wouldn't have even escaped the tunnel and might have died a miserable death. So, he just wanted to try returning the favor and give as much help in return as he could. Moreover, they were actually in the same situation if you thought about it. Sure, Jong-yum had awakened a brokenly overpowered ability, but that didn't mean the journey would be easy. Even though the world was in ruins, people still held on to the hope that their families were safe. Right now, Jong-yum was just another survivor trying to stay strong in the same difficult situation. Wouldn't it be nice if they just helped each other? Even though Yongsoo felt presumptuous, given that all he could offer was his driving skills, he still wanted to give this partnership a shot. He assured the young man that if things took a turn for the worse, he would flee to safety without hesitation. He wasn't foolish enough to risk his life or his family. For some reason, Jong-yum recalled pedaling toward the tunnel full of wyverns as the survivors cheered him on and wished him luck. On the way to the tunnel, he spotted a car with the key still in the ignition. This could have solved his problems right then and there. But at the end of the day, he chose to continue pedaling forward for the sake of the other people relying on him. He gave up the easy way out in hopes of saving more lives. Reminiscing about that not-so-distant memory made him smile. He didn't regret going down that route. Yongsoo was still pitching his plan to the young man, unsure if Jong-yum would agree. Jong-yum then explained that his subspace ability was a space where nothing could enter without his permission. As long as the subspace was maintained, he could even duplicate items from the storage facility endlessly. Yongsoo already knew that much though. If he really wanted to help, Jong-yum proposed one more condition. First, they would have to cut through Gangnam, Yuljiro, Dobong-gu, and finally, Uijeongbu. He wanted Yongsoo to drive him all the way to the last stop until they found Jong-yum's entire family. Second, the young man reckoned he wouldn't be able to accomplish the mission alone. However, upon leveling up, the subspace would be open to harboring other people inside. That could include Yongsoo's family. Jong-yum opened his subspace and insisted that if the man of the house was going, his entire family should come too. Thanks to wiping out the monster dog population in the city, he finally had enough mana crystals to level up the subspace. If Yongsoo continued helping Jong-yum find his family, he would gladly protect the girls too. Yongsoo was equally shocked and amused by yet another crazy feature of the young man's ability. He coolly removed his aviator glasses and agreed to bring his wife and daughter on this deadly road trip across the country. Hell, they could head out right here and now. With his current stockpile of 116 mana stones, he could spend 100 to upgrade to a level 2 subspace, leaving him with 16 in the bank. Upon confirmation, the system booted up the upgrade sequence seamlessly. The upgrade was successful, and level 2 was achieved. The maintenance costs were also adjusted from 1 mana stone a day to a whopping 6 every 24 hours. At least the capacity had been expanded to accommodate up to 20 people at once. An additional ability that allowed the user to store items in front of him had also been added. Sure, the maintenance cost of 6 mana stones was a bit steep, but it came with a few additional abilities and enhancements available with the upgrade. He decided to check those out later and take care of a more important matter for now. Jong-yum signaled Lee Yongsoo, Lee Yoljong, and Oh Ji-soo to enter his subspace, and the system notified the host of their presence. Upon giving them permission to enter, the family went through the portal and set foot inside. 1 second, they were outside a broken-down building. The next, they were transported to an entirely different space. Yongsoo's wife and kid were wide-eyed and in awe of the view in front of them. Even Yongsoo himself, who was familiar with the PAX fulfillment center, was speechless. The scale of the subspace was enormous. Shelves upon shelves of all kinds of supplies lined up left and right. Jong-yum called PAX to come over and demonstrate the crux of the subspace to the family. He explained that they could just tell the friendly artificial intelligence anything they needed while staying. They could check the availability of items from PAX, and if necessary, he'd handle delivery as well. There was a fresh food center somewhere in the area where they could get all kinds of food and ingredients. Yongsoo's wife knew how precious fresh ingredients were in the apocalypse, so she was hesitant to just freely use the young man's resources. That wasn't a big deal though, as everything in this subspace was infinite. Everything could be endlessly duplicated, so there was no need to be prudent. For now, they should take a little break and head out in about 30 minutes, as he needed to consolidate and check some new things regarding his abilities. Jong-yum's warm welcome cheered the family up. Yongsoo even took the opportunity to play princess with his daughter after a long time apart. Just like that, the new addition to the subspace adjusted quickly to their new life. With that taken care of, it was time to get right into business and check out the new abilities. At subspace level 2, he could now activate the subspace lab for 50 mana stones. He could open a laboratory where he could combine, classify, and transform registered items in the subspace. I bet he's about to make an axe plus refrigerator hybrid or something. As we've established, Kim Jong-yum's ability is to create a subspace where he can store an object with a storage capacity of 1 item. It was initially intended to be a one-time use storage he could access whenever he wanted. Nothing could enter or exit this space unless he explicitly allowed it. This was probably the original extent of his simple ability, but that no longer seems to be the case. Due to a crazy twist of fate, he managed to place a logistics center inside. In doing so, Pax AI and the Awakening operating system merged to form something entirely different. It enhanced his ability beyond just opening and closing a subspace, resulting in many more functions than intended. A prime example of this is the shipment mechanism, allowing him to hurl items at 100 kilometers per hour. The subspace ability alone should have been impressive by itself, but after meeting Pax, it became even crazier. Jongyum wasn't expecting to gain any additional abilities upon leveling up. Here we are upgrading to level 2 and unlocking one more slot for his storage capacity. This meant he could store more than just the Pax fulfillment center in his subspace. On top of that, he unlocked the option to install a lab where he could manipulate items registered in his subspace. The idea of creating something by combining two different items was fascinating, but it required a whopping 50 magic stones to start, so that would have to wait for now. In any case, it's clear that leveling up would only make his abilities more overpowered from now on. He really wanted to check out all the new features, but he was too short on mana stones. For now, there is one thing he can confirm. When he first stored Pax FC in the subspace, Jongyum thought he had lost his mind, so he just casually blurted out the command to store the whole center without thinking twice. If it's true that he could absorb and store anything, then could he go crazy with it? When the system asked what he would like to store next, Jongyum resolutely answered that he wanted to store the entire planet Earth. He was prompted to confirm his choice, and he did. Tension filled the air as he waited for the results. After a few seconds of silence, the system informed him that it failed to store the entire planet, as the target was outside the storable range. Jongyum already figured it wouldn't work, but he had to give it a try. The ability would have been too overpowered if the command had gone through. From behind, Yongsoo approached to discuss the route they should take to reach Gangnam as quickly as possible. Yongsoo suggested taking the main road for now. Jongyum was expecting a few more minutes of rest, as Yongsoo was supposed to be playing with his daughter after being apart for so long. But they would have to save that playtime for later, as the little girl had already passed out, surrounded by all kinds of toys. She felt safe inside the subspace and fell asleep after just a little playtime. Yongsoo thanked the young man once more for everything he had done for him and his family. Humble as always, Jongyum asserted that it was no big deal, as they were simply helping each other in these tumultuous times. This filled Yongsoo with a strong sense of duty to repay Jongyum no matter what. Next thing you know, the duo was back on the cargo truck. Jongyum sat in the passenger seat and suddenly felt uneasy at the earnestness of his driver buddy. He looked at Yongsoo and his peaceful smile. Driving was the only thing Yongsoo was good at. If we're talking speed, he would confidently claim he's faster than anyone on the planet. Jongyum felt uneasy at Yongsoo's stillness and asked if they could go slowly for now. He even said, "Please," but Yongsoo was already locked in. He intended to speedrun this whole trip and make the young man experience real speed. Jongyum's tears fell as the truck sped up without warning. And so, with Yongsoo's family safe in the subspace, the boys braved the abandoned world in their speeding cargo truck. It didn't take long to reach the next leg of their journey after staying on the main road for a few minutes. They had to switch to an alternative route, which was more deserted than the main road. Luckily, there didn't seem to be many monsters roaming the area either, meaning monsters only gathered where people were. Jongyum hadn't known there was an isolated road like this on the way to Seoul. The area was supposed to be a Bronze Age archaeological site or something, so it was protected from urban development. The road was a bit tough, but they didn't have to worry about random monsters or shady people popping up. Jongyum was already drained just from sitting next to such a recklessly skillful driver. Much to Yongsoo's surprise, there seemed to be a blockade in the middle of the road. They had just left the ruined city, and this area was supposed to be an abandoned path, yet man-made deterrents cluttered the ground. If he wasn't mistaken, it looked like military barricades, complete with spike strips to stop any vehicle daring to go off-road. Maybe the military was still active in this area. Maybe there was a base nearby. That seemed like the simplest answer, but Jongyum didn't think this installation appeared here so simply. Looking through the side mirror, he spotted an armed military vehicle approaching from behind. Upon closer inspection, the driver and the others in the vehicle didn't look like they belonged to the military at all. Those guys had probably been watching the truck from a hiding spot. The duo wouldn't be able to avoid them. Jongyum proposed opening a small portal under the steering wheel, so Yongsoo could go inside with his family while he dealt with the strangers alone. If these people intended to kill them, they would have already shot at the cargo truck. Assessing the situation, Jongyum saw 3 people, all armed. The leading man hoped to see the truck's tires burst or something. When Jongyum feigned innocence and asked what was going on, the man looked at him like what was about to happen was common sense. He ordered the young man in the driver's seat to get out and open the cargo. Jongyum played along with their demands and slowly opened the cargo hold of the truck. He revealed stacks upon stacks of supply boxes, surprising the thugs posing as military personnel. Just the small pile of tuna boxes alone would be priceless in the current situation. They truly hit the jackpot. They figured the young man must be a delivery guy of some sort, and Jong-yum kept up the act. The leader claimed the truck and all its contents, implicitly threatening to gun Jong-yum down. As expected, they were just after food and supplies. When asked where he got the contents of the truck, the young man carefully considered his answer. He simply said he got everything from a logistics center. Technically, he wasn't lying, but he also warned them that they wouldn't find the logistics center. Besides, the only roads to it had already collapsed or been blocked, but if they needed more, he could get more. The leader looked Jong-yum up and down, sizing him up. When asked about the remaining supplies in this so-called logistics center, Jong-yum said what was in the truck was just a fraction of the bulk. One of the goons looked at his watch and warned the leader they were out of time. They had to wrap things up, so the captain ordered his goons to grab a hood. One of them was tasked with driving the truck, and the captain took care of Jong-yum. He did so by launching a punch imbued with mysterious energy straight into Jong-yum's abdomen. Caught off guard, Jong-yum gritted his teeth in pain as he slowly passed out from the blow. He folded like an omelet, and everything turned dark. When he regained consciousness, he heard the thugs calling someone "Sir" as they dragged him into a room. The captain reported what he had heard from Jong-yum about the supplies in the logistics center. Finally, the hood was taken off, and Jong-yum slowly opened his eyes, still in pain from the punch. In front of him was a burly man sitting on the other side of an office desk. A plaque on the desk bore the title Commander. The South Korean flag was proudly placed front and center. No matter how you looked at it, the man sitting at the commander's desk didn't seem like one. Furthermore, there were bloody soldier corpses on the side of the office. The thugs had brought Jong-yum to a strange place. The big boss had already heard a bit from his boys, but he wanted to hear more about this food and supplies directly from Jong-yum's lips. He wanted to know where the logistics center was. Jong-yum continued playing along, confessing that he got everything from the Gunpo Logistics Center. The big boss praised him for making a smart move. He even wished he had hit up a place like that early on. Jong-yum asked where he was and what was going on. The big boss explained they were obviously in a military base, though he couldn't remember the name of the place. From the surrounding area, Jong-yum was sure they were in a communications headquarters. The big boss had been exempt from mandatory military service, so he didn't care about the name. One quirk of this place happened every evening at 6 p.m. It would be faster if Jong-yum had just seen it for himself. When the clock hit 6, a blood-curdling scream filled the room and the entire military base. Big Boss and his men had already gotten used to these terrifying shrieks. Unsettled, Jong-yum looked out the window. He could not help but feel a bit of familiarity from the blood-curdling sound. Outside were wyverns freely roaming the skies as the sun set. There were dozens of them blocking out the light with their massive bodies and enormous wingspans. But these weren't the typical wyverns that Jong-yum was used to killing. These creatures were way too big. Big Boss could not agree more. The size of those bastards was no joke. Big Boss took great pride in his strength, but even he almost died fighting one of those scaly beasts. Weirdly enough, his attacks felt like they were being blocked by something intangible. According to the soldier with his head smashed into the wall on the side of the office, the military tried to fight those monsters with guns, and they got helplessly wiped out. If supernatural powers didn't work, there was no way ordinary bullets would. So, the military opted to recruit others to fight those monsters. Big Boss wanted to join in until he saw how strong the beasts were and how weak the military was. He did what every big boss would do and took over the entire base, ruling over the area. Well, he didn't really kill the remnants of the military force, and he didn't want to kill Jong-yum either. The young man seemed to know a lot, and the food situation in the base was horrendous. There were plenty of weapons and everything else in the communication headquarters, but what they were severely lacking was food. So, he wanted to tap into that logistics center and get some. The departure would be tomorrow morning. If Jong-yum did this for him, Big Boss promised to accept him as a member of their family. He asserted that the group could protect the young man from monsters like that oversized wyvern outside. Unfortunately for the Big Boss, Jong-yum had stopped listening to him yap for a while now. He was wondering what to put inside his subspace, and it seemed like fate had just handed him the perfect place on a silver platter. Ignoring the people around him, he spoke to Pax and requested that the Joint Command Communications headquarters be stored in the subspace. Confused by Jong-yum's words, Big Boss threatened to kill the young man. Before he could even finish his threats, his office had already vanished. The entire military base was erased as if it had never existed in the first place. Big Boss looked around in confusion. The only thing left from his stronghold was the office chair. It was like a fucked up dream.